okay, good, say no more. And then I like ran out. I just need one word prompt. And then I like ran away and I wrote it.
It's improv.
Yes, it was so perfect. It was just like that epic moment of like, yeah, that's how you make it. Cause I was like, I don't want them to be adventurers.
Amazing job, both of you. This is without a doubt my favorite episode I've seen so far.
You did it, Gina. You did it.
Did it.
You hear that? Caitlin says we're the best out of everyone. And I'm going to text Patton right now.
Oh, yeah.
Well, Aabria knows this. I'm a huge fan of the 7 from Dimension 20, and this had that chaos energy that I loved from it. So like 2 minutes in, I was like, oh, this is going to be the one to beat without question.
Big fan of the 7 as well. And thank you.
It's that femme chaos that feels so good where you're like, there's no boys here. We will feel societally inspired to calm down around. So full feral. Let's go.
Yeah. Let's be unhinged.
I love it. So I have to ask you guys both first, what were your first thoughts when you heard what this show was?
I was a week before sub-in. So the incredible, beautiful, and talented Becca Scott was meant to be the DM for this episode, but she was having contractions. So
yeah.
So full baby was about to be born and
actively having a baby.
And was like, I can still do it. And then was like, maybe not. But fully would have, and still showed up to the taping day. And we were like, girl, you're having contractions. And she was like, I still got time.
That's the best part, is that she was there. We're like, will there be one more audience member in like 20 minutes? What is happening?
Yes. Yeah. We were about to have another audience member. It was beautiful. So I got subbed in a week before and sort of had to, was like, this is going to be very silly. And also, how do I subvert it even more? Because that's kind of my jam for gaming. And when I get to GM is like, oh, it's weird. How do I make it weirder?
Yeah.
How do I make it even more different? Especially with a show where everyone is going to maybe perish horribly at the end. It's like, okay, well then how do I make it hurt more? We'll make everybody love them. But yeah, so it was silly and I thought, let's make it weirder and sillier.
I just want to jump in and not answer your question, Caitlin, because I'm a monster, but just say that like
we do that a lot.
I do that all the time. And I just really want to like give shine to how much Gina nailed the brief, because that idea that like it's a really short show, we're all level 1 and we're all going to die in the end. Gina said maybe, which has made me competitive, and I'm like, I could have survived. Hold on. But I think we were all I was told I had to die in the end.
You do, but I wanted to feel like the thing that I thought was, the Drew Barrymore death in Scream, where no matter how many times you watch it, you still think, like, she's gonna die. She perishes. She's 100%. She's the opening kill, and you still hope. And that was the feeling I wanted to evoke. Like, oh, we know they're going to die, but if I can trick you for 1 second into thinking maybe they live, that's what the show feels like.
I think you nailed it. And by giving us that like grounded moment of like, here's a very silly, fun premise that like, if we were doing this on any other show that wasn't Faster Purple Worm Kill would be such a like fun and silly exercise, that like dropping that into a thing where you're like, and I'm just sitting with that understanding that like it's going to break bad, but like not yet. And then at some point you kind of forget and you're like, actually it might be okay. Hold on. And then it's a giant purple worm and then it isn't okay. But that's beautiful too. It was so good. And I will come back and answer your question and say, I heard about this way back in the day when they were kind of first developing it, and got tapped and was like, oh, this sounds, for all those reasons I just previously stated, this sounds like a very fun exercise in how do you come in and like give character and stakes and a phenomenal death very, very quickly and efficiently. And it feels in the best possible way, like long form improv exercise, or just like get in, get out, have a big high, get a big laugh, die as cool as you can, and then go home. And that's like such a fun brief.
I can tell you the exact moment I fell in love with the family was when you cased both nieces instead back, because I was like, I want more of them. This has been a thing for a while. This is so great. And Gina, I love that you made a Scream reference for Matthew Lillard's.
No,
yeah, look at you.
So low key Scream is one of my all-time favorites. It was the first thing that scared me as a kid. And so I had to watch it like 800 times on the movie channel when I was younger until I wasn't scared of it anymore. And then it just became this like core moment in my life. So yeah, the Drew Barrymore thing was just like a genuine, that's like the first thing I thought. I was just like, that moment is just so good.
I love that. And then first off, the fact that you did this in a week, wild. I can't believe you did this in a week because it rolls.
It was a very specific set of parameters to write an episode.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, because I mean, a week out and you're like, okay, what's all the information, because all the producers and everyone attached to the show is also like, oh no, we have to get a new GM like right before, in any sort of production. That's hard and bad and no one likes that. But you do it, you accommodate. And so everyone was super on board and everyone was like trying to onboard me as quickly as possible. And we're like, if you want us to write a scenario for you, let us know. Like, we get it. It's hard to write a campaign that quickly without ever really getting to talk to the players. And like, you don't really, it's just so odd. And you're like, and it has to be an hour and it has to be this. And like, figuring out how to crescendo those beats instead of just short amount of time, while also making sure that like the point of the show for me is like making sure to get everyone a hero moment, and not just like a hero death, but like a hero moment where they get to RP really well, because that's why you want to be at a table. It's you want that moment where you get to have that bit of connection or that bit of storytelling where you feel really proud of like, oh yeah, I think that felt really good, or it felt like the story really either made you laugh or had fun. Just you want to have fun and you want to feel like you had a good time. And so writing it was very fun. And my partner Joey, would you want, in love?
I love him so much.
When I first got asked to do it, they were like, Joey was like, okay. Because anytime I sit down, I'm always like, I love working with him. We'll just sit face to face and be like, okay, let's brainstorm silly stuff at each other. And he was the one that was like, all right, well, you like renovation shows. How about here? He'll just be like, renovate. And I'll be like, okay, good, say no more. And then I like, I just need one word prompt. And then I like ran away and I wrote it.
It's improv.
Yes, it was so perfect. And it was just like that epic moment of like, yeah, that's how you make it. Because I was like, I don't want them to be adventurers, because everyone is going to be like first level adventurers. And I knew my episode wasn't the first episode. So it was like, by the time we're like mid-season, you want to see what else you can mess with the form and like, make sure that we have a nice sort of season arc for the show, since it's all vignettes. And so making it like, well, why would they be level 1 adventurers seeking out bad guys? It's like, well, because they're not. They're just people. They're just people who happen to get eaten. And that's also what happens in the world. Like, villagers also get maimed by monsters. We're just seeing the villagers one. Or in this case, I guess, sweet cult members. Like they did vote for cult, right?
Yeah, like a little bit of a cult.
A little bit of a cult. But it's like a young home for women cult. Yeah. Yeah, it's okay.
It uplifts women. It's fine.
Yeah.
I do think that there's a really fun benefit here for the fact that like we all know each other. Like, this is a unit that has played together several times. So there was that moment in the group chat when we're like, oh yeah, Becca stepped out because obviously she's 11 months pregnant. What's happening? What? Okay, sure. So who are we gonna get? I remember like the 3 hours in the group chat where we were like, gosh, we're gonna get someone random, but we all know each other. But then the person is gonna be like someone assigned to us. And it felt like substitute teacher energy. And we're like, are we just gonna give this other person we don't know a hard time because they're not the boss of us? And then getting the it's Gina, and we're like, oh, we're gonna be great. We're going to be so okay. And obviously, when Gina came in with the very strong concept, we were like, oh, cool. We can build characters around this conceit of why would this group of people be going to buy a house and what does that mean? But everyone had kind of thought about their builds a little bit. So it was nice translating builds into a strong family unit. And yeah, I think there is something so beautiful about the strong family unit means that we can presuppose a lot of things about how the group gets along and what their reactions will be. So then you can find moments within a very short form to have some individuation, just to stand out and step out and do something a little different and a little funky and have a personal moment, which you made so much beautiful space for. And it was just so good and so fun.
You guys naturally had that. It was so nice. Yeah, you got when because I knew that because I was coming in late that you probably would have had characters in mind with Becca. And so I wanted to, instead of being I need you guys to have this kind of party, it was, okay, whatever you've built, I just need you now to figure out personal reasons why you need this. And also you guys naturally already sort of had a buddy system of your RP partner.
Yeah.
It was the aunties had sort of, you and Sage already sort of had this beautiful concept. And then Paula and Josephine also were okay, yeah, we want to also have this concept. And then it was so organic of okay, you are adopted and you are loved and these are your family members, and feel free to have as much family dynamic in either direction as you want. But the only thing that's important is that you all share a goal and the personal reasons why. And that's really what, sticks a campaign and party together. So he's nice.
Yeah, I will say this group felt the most lived in, because I think all the other groups were kind of not necessarily thrown together at the last minute, but weren't necessarily as communicative before the show. I talked to Anjali last week and she's like, oh yeah, we figured out our connections in the green room before we walked in. Whereas this felt much more it truly, I was I could watch hours of these characters from before this happened. So that was very, very cool. I also am curious, Aabria, what did it feel like to basically be playing an NPC?
So good. But honestly, it makes it so easy when you're from GM to GM, you're oh, throw a little guy that's got a strong point of view in a specific direction. It actually makes things really easy. The harder part is knowing that you have a certain amount of time and they're having a bunch of things you want to do or say or philosophies. You're essentially everyone here is an NPC. We are a footnote in the story of the adventurers that will someday come and kill that purple worm and avenge us. So
yeah, you're really the lore starter.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I love being just a group of fridged house hunters for a purple worm. So it's actually really nice. NPCs are very fun and very freeing. So it felt like all of my favorite things of getting to spend more time inside an NPC and be oh, I can explore the space a little bit. And I'm dead. Perfect.
Gina, can you talk to me a little bit? Because you do such a great job in this episode of balancing the completely ridiculous comedy that comes in with really dramatic, tragic moments.
Yeah.
Can you talk about finding that balance and playing off the players who, let's be honest, they're just fully throwing as much silly shit at you as possible?
Absolutely. Again, I feel very fortunate and very lucky that I knew these players really well. I have gamed with all of these women many times over. So I was coming into this table knowing their play styles and a lot of gaming trust already. So that was, in my favor already to make me look really good at this. But in general, I my preference for GMing and for playing in games, I like games that understand that humor has to be there to juxtapose against really intense things. And I like when players, like, they don't, like, the NPCs in the game don't know they're about to die. So why wouldn't they be joking and having fun with their friends and, you know, making jokes with their tiny adopted daughters who are adult grown women, or like jabbing at their forever roommate, maybe lover, forever roommate. And I think it helps create an emotional journey and an emotional, like, hopefully roller coaster for the audience to feel like you have to have that tension break for tension to keep getting built. It's why, you know, horror films have jump scares. It like relieves the tension so that it can rebuild for those moments, because if you just stay at tension, it's not fulfilling or satisfying. You have to kind of have that ramp and that build. So comedy is such a great way to kind of be like, oh, I forgot that I'm stressed for my people that I'm watching that I really like. And then I also like for it to, yeah, Bria, you can attest to this. We've gamed many times. As a GM, it feels really rewarding for those moments when the players are having a silly time and sort of forget that they're in this sort of grim world, to remind them in really thematic ways where I like surprise, like making sure that my players are surprised by those moments too, of like the switch of intensity and the and that kind of stuff. That's kind of my jam. I love getting to surprise your players back, especially with a game that's a little on rails for its outcome. Finding ways to surprise is the fun part of being a GM.
You absolutely nailed it. Because yeah, I think all of those things were in place. There are the moments that, like, if this group was genre savvy and could hear the ominous music, like, you laid the track for all of the, like, here's a warning sign that something's really bad here, but we don't know we're in a horror film, so we're just going to keep going. And then layering in the, like, here's the direct scare to this group. And then you hit that point where you're like, the jump scares are there, and now you know the situation you might be in. And just having that heartbeat of hope before you're like, but the thing is, you're not in a horror film. Like, we're all girls, so there's no final girl. Everyone, this is it. And it was so well done, especially in an hour. Like, man, I can't yell enough about how, like, difficult the brief is for, like, these episodes, and how much every GM on every episode crushed it. But, like, especially you, because you're my friend and I can gas you up because I got to be at your table. But you crushed it, and that's not an easy thing to do.
I completely agree. And Aabria, I have to ask about that big damn hero moment. You fully just were like, okay, what attracts them? Noise, great. Family go left. I'm running right. And I'm going to start yelling the most crazy Midwestern nonsense possible. Because I'm from the Midwest. That accent was insanity.
Thank you. We were agonizing about it in the green room. Like, it's not a good, I'm doing my best, but it's crazy. And just, you know, exactly. It's just that we're not adventurers. This is not a brave, like, receive pronunciation, cool British hero accent. Like, we're just some guys. But that idea that, like, you're level 1 something, so you always had the potential to be a hero. And I think I yell this a lot in campaigns, especially ones in which I die, of which I have had a lot this year. My PC's died a lot this year.
You're very into characters having death, like, arcs.
Yeah. I gotta go to therapy. I gotta stop doing this on the internet for money and go talk to someone in private about what's going on with me. But again, it's that idea that, like, in your final moments, who are you really? And of course, it's really fun to play the, like, subversion game of, like, oh, it's not just a horror film. It's that idea of, like, I'm going to subvert it. I'm not going to let the monster kill me. I choose my death. But I just wanted that moment where you're like, oh, in a different story, with a different scenario, maybe this is someone who later could have been a level 20, like, paladin, hero of the realm, demigod of Faerun, but it was just a little too late, and it just wasn't quite enough. And I think that's really fun and good. And also just tormenting the rest of the table. Like, I love Sage and Joe and Paula so much, and just being like, suck it, I'm going to go die now. Good luck. And getting to spend the rest of the time just kind of chilling out, watching the story as an audience member was very good too.
I will say that they immediately got you back by turning around.
They did.
Useless.
They did.
That moment made me so happy, because I had written in specifically that there would be a fork, and that quick decision you would have to make, left or right. And it couldn't have gone more beautifully for you to have faked everyone out. As a person who gets to enjoy the story too, I was like, oh, yes, that is the right choice. There isn't a right choice, but that is it. Like, in finding that moment, and then having them just not take the like again, those moments where you're going, I know you're gonna die. Like, any moment that you're like, if they had just made a different choice, maybe they would have lived. Like, if Aabria's character had gone down that other one, and they all did, like, maybe Sage's character wouldn't have stopped and wouldn't have done, like, all of these things that just add up to the story of how they perished is pretty neat. You're brilliant, Aabria, is all.
Oh my gosh, I got it from you.
I will say, Gina, I think one of my favorite choices you made in the entire game, though, was on the zero being like, nah, you've been dead for a minute.
That felt good. Like,
brilliant.
You gotta reward a story moment like a 20 to a nat 1. It's like, oh, you got him, but you got too, babe. And it's like, oh, how do I, like, that's, those are the the GM moments where you're like, okay, how do I make this make sense? How do I make a fail and an extreme fail and an extreme success narratively make sense? How does the dice tell you how the story went?
Yes.
Because a fail isn't, we always talk about failing forward. Like, you don't just not do the thing.
Yeah.
It's like, no, something happens, something narratively, visually, emotionally, something happens with that fail that isn't just, you don't do it. It's something negative or something impactful happens. So the fact that they organically were just chatting to dead sisters, it was like, great. You've been, yeah, of course you're seeing her. You're starting to bleed into the spirit world. The D&D world has afterlives, baby.
Hey.
Like, we got more life after this. It just doesn't happen to be on this mortal plane.
So you're saying we could buy a house?
Absolutely. There's
just
a spirit
ghost house.
Yeah, there's
Amazing.
a ghost house. You don't think Josephine and Paula are haunting that mine?
Very fair point. A very fair point.
Poltergeist to the girls who are there. 100% poltergeists.
Truly.
Eventually, they will grow in spirit form to be eventual patrons to all of the girls at this household. This will be a warlock patron house at some point. That is my
Wait, that's so good. Hold on, I want to go back and play more.
Right?
Someone text Lillard.
The poem at the end is a curse upon that land. She's in the soil. Like, that's a bad place. That's a bad place.
I just realized now that it's a curse. And I was like, oh, poetry. Oh. Oop.
Yeah.
Good for us. Yeah. I think we should get to be little curses as a treat.
Right?
I need a whole campaign of this.
Gina, make a whole campaign.
Okay. Yeah. Oh my gosh. One of the things that I find really, really fun about Fast Purple Worm is how surprisingly heartfelt it ends up being with this. What for you guys was one of the most surprising parts of being a part of the show?
I think that's the thing that sneaks up on you when you're like, oh, I'm here for a good time, not a long time. And you don't expect to have like strong interpersonal moments. When they do happen, they hit even harder. Sage and I have a delightful running joke where wherever we get the opportunity, we will be pen pals. So it was always fun to like go in and lean into that. Like we have a bit, we will run that bit into the ground. But knowing that we're like, cool, we're here for an hour. We'll do our little goof. We'll talk about us being aunties and very good friends. But no, being able to call out and have like the actual like connection and saying like, no, you're my partner and I love you, has that. It's just the ability to subvert your own expectations. And I think this game is a perfect example of it. And whenever it does creep up, you can kind of see the energy at those tables kind of shift and be like, oh, something real happened in the midst of all of the tragedy of monstrous death and comedy of who are you minutes before monstrous death. If you can sneak a feeling in there, I think it just lands even better because no one really expects that part.
Always sneak a feeling.
Always sneak a feeling.
Always. I love wholesome games. Love them with my whole heart that I then break. You know, you want it to matter so much, especially because it's short, especially because it ends tragically. You want those nuggets to connect. This is a storytelling game about connection and relationships. Like, obviously some people can play it where it's just about the combat, but that's not where we're doing it. You know, we're trying to tell a really engaging story that means a lot to us and means a lot to anyone watching. And so throwing in those beats, like anytime you play a game, like anytime I've gotten to play in like Call of Cthulhu or like 10 Candles, where you know the outcome is an I love making it wholesome. It makes it so much harder when bad things happen in a good way. It makes them feel really just more, because people are like that, you know?
Yeah.
And yeah, if you're just a big rugged guy, that's great and all, but like, what if that big rugged guy cries?
Ooh.
Love that. And then was there anything from this experience that you wanted to take into future games? Because Aabria, I know you had 2 pretty kind of horror tragedy based games coming up on deck after this.
It was really fun playing this truly days before we started shooting Burrow's End. So I had already had everything written and lined up and planned, but it was really nice getting those like early, not warm up in any sort of pejorative or dismissive way, but it is helpful to go into something not cold and go like, oh, that's what it feels like to be a player at a horror table where tragedy is there. And the surprise element isn't because you know what's coming, but like how to feel as a player on the receiving end of a horror story makes it much easier to go in days later and then months later for Candela Obscura and remember that as I go in and say like, cool, I'm the GM and I'm here to be spooky and I'm going to scare my table and I'm going to scare the audience, but never forget what it was like to like be scared to feel that horror, to remember that moments have to matter and to always push for feeling inside of all of the spectacle of shock and spookiness.
Yeah. Burrow's End, speaking of wholesome and feelings. Oh, yeah.
We're talking about it's just a bunch of little critters. They're just having fun in the woods.
Nothing bad ever happens to me.
Nothing. I also like wholesome games.
Don't even.
The thing I want to take away is playing with these players.
I will follow you anywhere, Gina.
So good. So good. Such a reminder of like the thing I truly want to take away. It like that honest, genuine answer is that feeling when you have trust at a table and everyone is showing up for everyone and everyone is invested in what this moment is. You know, it's short. It's a big, quick, it's a falling star. It's a comet. It's quick. It's fast. Burn bright. And I'm going to help you burn as bright as you can. And you're going to help me burn as bright as we can. And then it's done and it never happens again. And sometimes Oh, that feeling is just such a when it happens, it will only inevitably continue to make you a better storyteller in the future. When you find those nuggets, hold on to them and try to bring them at every table.
I love that. And I don't think we can top that. This is the episode to beat, in my opinion. Everyone has to match this energy. And I don't know.
Hear that?
Well,
I want to start talking mess to all the other episodes.
Oh, yeah.
You hear that,
I
Anj?
stick a brie at you other episodes.
Luis, what's up?
Come on.
What's up? Step up.
Oh, I got to get Luis at my table.
Oh, he's a dream.
I know. I'll be so good.
I love it. Thank you guys so much for talking to me about Fast Purple Worm, Kill. It's just so much fun. This is one of those ones that's just fun, even when you're like, oh no, I like these characters.
Yeah. Thank you. Watch
Heck
the
yeah.
episode.
Watch it.